Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Your federal government. Who protects the Praetorian Guard in D.C.? Well, the Department of Justice, among other agencies, apparently. The story of IRS contractor Charles Littlejohn. I loved him in Robin Hood.
Oh my God. What's the guy's name again?
Charles Littlejohn, like
Okay.
Little John, like the character in Robin
Right.
Hood. Littlejohn admitted to stealing tax returns for President Trump and thousands of wealthy Americans before leaking them to two separate outlets. ProPublica has done 50 stories with all the information he stole and leaked. We don't know his motives, but he leaked Trump's information to the New York Times at the point when Trump was fighting demands for his tax returns by Democrats in Congress. He also carefully planned to get away with the theft and avoid detection, as the Justice Department's court documents make clear. He used broad search parameters designed to conceal the true purpose of his queries. He employed a private website, virtual machines, multiple devices to avoid IRS protocols designed to detect and prevent large downloads or uploads. And even though the maximum penalty for unauthorized disclosure of tax information is 5 years for every instance, and we're talking about thousands of records, he's looking at a potential plea deal of 8 months with a fine of in the range of $4,000 to $40,000. Violate the tax confidentiality of thousands of people, get away with little more than a year in federal prison for white-collar criminals. That's what the Department of Justice wants for Charles Littlejohn. The old Kleinsmith slap on the wrist, because, hey, you were this. They won't say this. I'm going to say it. Because what you did was illegal, but it was in furtherance of our politics, including at the Department of Justice. It was in furtherance of getting Trump, embarrassing Trump, and embarrassing other wealthy people who aren't paying their fair share. How do we know that? Because Mr. 10% says so. So, it was illegal, and you're going to have to fall on the sword a little bit, Hunter Biden, but it's not terrible. The Praetorian Guard and the Department of Justice as the in-house counsel. And by the way, who comprises the Praetorian Guard? Just while we're talking about the federal government, this Daily Wire story is really remarkable. It's difficult to be surprised by what you'll find when you start turning over rocks in D.C., but one of the things you'll find is Nejwa Ali, who's an officer of the Department of Homeland Security. She handles asylum claims. She's also a pro-Hamas former spokesman for the Palestinian Liberation Organization.
Of course she is.
Who has been posting pictures on social media of Hamas terrorists parachuting into Gaza with guns, writing, "F Israel and any Jew who supports Israel." After working for the PLO office in D.C., she secured a job at the Department of Homeland Security. Of course she did, as an asylum officer, where she was tasked with applying immigration laws and regulations to asylum applications. Then, more recently, she moved over to be an adjudication officer for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, where she analyzes amended legislation or policy, prepares written reports and findings, and reviews matters to make determinations on cases for immigration benefits. She's the one vetting asylum applications and benefits packages for immigrants. Anybody vet her? Probably they did.
They did, and they're like, "Come on over. We
One of
want
us."
you." Yep.
There's your Praetorian Guard, and who is at the ready to defend the Praetorian Guard, even if you have to, do some things that are a bit uncomfortable, a prosecution that's a bit uncomfortable, to sort of give the appearance of equal justice under the law. Okay. For more on this and other political matters, local and geopolitical, John Hinderaker, president of the Center of the American Experiment, contributor to PowerlineBlog.com. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Dan.
Let's And some interesting personnel choices as well as prosecutorial discretion we see playing out in D.C., isn't it?
Dan, there's a popular perception that we live in a country that has two standards of justice, one for Democrats, one for Republicans. And this Little John story is just more confirmation of that. It is absolutely true. He leaked all these tax returns, but he did it in furtherance of the cause, the Democratic Party cause. And so, as you say, he got the Klein-Smith slap on the wrist. We've seen this over and over again, and particularly from the politicized Department of Justice. Now, I'm sure you remember when Eric Holder, back in the Obama administration, described himself as Attorney General as President Obama's wingman. Remember that? Well,
Yeah.
Those are the good old days. I mean, the Department of Justice has really gotten corrupt under Merrick Garland.
Yeah, I thought he meant maybe just at the bathhouses, but apparently it
Oh,
was bigger than
hey.
that. Hello.
Maybe on the basketball court.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, particularly this DHS officer, given the context of it, with the president being over in Israel and expressing support for Israel, even though there's some equivocations there, and what you're seeing in D.C. and from members of Congress like Rashida Tlaib, we were just talking about earlier. The sort of enemies inside the perimeter when it comes to shared values. This is what people who worry about identitarian politics, like myself, mean when we talk about the existential downside of identitarian politics. If you don't have shared values as citizens, as Americans, then it doesn't take much to descend into ugliness.
Well, we've seen a lot of ugliness, Dan, haven't we? I mean, we've seen it in the universities. We've seen it from some church groups. We've seen it from politicians like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and many others. And it's been kind of shocking, frankly. I don't expect much from leftists, Dan, and neither do you. But these people have no problem with mass murder, with gang rape, with beheading babies and burning babies alive, with kidnapping people, with going around hunting people down like animals, as these Gazans did. And we're seeing all these people, and people from the arts world, all these people who apparently have no problem with that, whatever. Not a word of condemnation. But if Israel sets out to defend itself, or, God forbid, to exact revenge, which they certainly ought to do, and I hope are doing, then these people go nuts. These people go nuts. And I don't know what kind of moral standard they can possibly be applying. But as you say, it's identitarian politics. They've got a side in the conflicts in the Middle East, and that side obviously is not Israel, and that side also is not the United States.
Well, a lot of Hollywood elites, like John Cusack, I don't know if you know him, but he tweeted out that Biden's trip was a disaster, openly hugging prime minister who's spoken about genocidal thoughts, showing compassion, concern for Israeli victims, not for Palestinians. He should have demanded to meet with a delegation of Palestinians, could have demanded a ceasefire. Well, the problem is that Mahmoud Abbas decided not to meet with him after the alleged bombing of the hospital, which really was Hamas anyway. So what do you do in this situation? How can you convince these idiots, or just there's no hope for them?
Well, there's no
Convince
hope
John
for them.
Cusack?
Look, this is one of the things we're learning. There is no hope for somebody who sees what we saw in this Gazan attack on Israel, the slaughtered families, the murdered babies, the rapes, the kidnappings, the parading of naked victims around. I mean, anybody who sees that and thinks, oh, that's okay, that's my team, there is no hope for that person. And the best we can do is, number one, hope that they're a small minority. I think they are. I'll come back to that in a moment. And number two, try to get them the heck out of here. I mean, the ones that we can ship out of the country under the immigration laws, and Tom Cotton was saying this yesterday, let's get them the heck out of the country. If we can't ship them out of the country, let's at least get them out of the government, get them out of the universities, get them out of other institutions where they can do harm. But a quick comment, Amy, on Biden's visit to Israel, which was about an hour and a half long. He zipped
But they
in and
said it
zipped
was
out.
8 hours, but they had to refuel. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, a quick comment. I mean, the people around Biden are not completely stupid, right? And they know that 98% of Americans were shocked and horrified by what Hamas and the Gazans did in this sneak attack on Israel. And Biden did the right thing morally, and he also did the right thing politically. The vast majority of Americans are not interested in this equivalence between the evil that is done by Hamas and by the Gazans and the response to that evil by Israel. These people calling for a ceasefire, I mean, that's exactly as if the day after Pearl Harbor, people have been out saying, okay, time for a ceasefire. I mean, it's crazy.
Right, we fire, then ceasefire. Yeah, no,
Right,
sure.
exactly.
Who doesn't want that?
And then let a little time go by, they're going to fire some more.
I wanted to get your assessment as to whether or not there's any hope for House Republicans to find a speaker, or are we going to track to have Patrick give me McLiberty or give me McDeath, McHenry be the interim for a while?
Well, let's just hope it's not Jeffries. I mean,
yeah, right.
It's a sad spectacle. It's a sad spectacle, Dan. I mean, the Republicans have no party discipline. They have no party loyalty. They command a slim majority in the House of Representatives, and they should follow a simple principle, which, by the way, is what the Democrats do. Whoever gets the majority in the Republican caucus is now going to be the Speaker of the House, because the Republicans are all going to vote for him. That's the simple principle that not only at the federal level, but at all levels of government.
Yeah, that's right.
Caucuses follow. Our caucus votes, and the winner in our caucus, we all vote for him, and he's the speaker or whatever, right? And because the Republicans are completely lacking in party loyalty and party discipline, they have no ability to hold their caucus together, and they have turncoats who will vote with the Democrats. And I don't know what these people want, right? They weren't satisfied with McCarthy. They're not satisfied with Jim Jordan. I don't know what they want, and I'm not sure what it's going to take to get us a Speaker of the House.
Well, I mean, obviously it's different people that are differently dissatisfied, but still the responsibility falls on the shoulders of Matt Gaetz and those who led the effort to depose McCarthy, the successful effort to depose McCarthy, because we said this at the beginning, too. It's like, all right, I'm not here to live or die on a hill for Kevin McCarthy, though I think he did a pretty good job, all things considered, up until that point. But if you want to depose him, then you better have a plan that is seamless in terms of succession. And his plan was, I like Jim Jordan or I like Steve Scalise. I would say, well, it's not. You're not the only vote. So how do you put together the necessary votes to ensure that the transition is smooth and it doesn't splinter as it has? And of course, there was no thinking about that. It was just posturing over spending and something seemingly personal between the two of them. And now you have really sort of an embarrassing level of chaos and seeming incompetence at a moment where not only does it require Republicans to be speaking with moral clarity in one voice, but there's a huge political opportunity in addition to that.
Well, that's exactly right, Dan. And you make a great point. There was no plan. It was ego. It was personal vendetta. Gaetz was happy when he got McCarthy toppled, right? When he got McCarthy ousted. That was the end as far as he was concerned. He had no plan. The people who voted with him had no plan. And here we are.
John Hinderaker is the president of Center for the American Experiment, as well as a contributor at PowerlineBlog.com. Always must-reading, PowerlineBlog.com. John, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Dan. Have a good day.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You've heard me talk about my love of coffee over and over again. I'm here to tell you I have discovered one of the best brews I've ever tasted and a company that I cannot wait to support. I'm here to tell you about Bone Frog Coffee. The Bone Frog is a sacred symbol in the SEAL teams. It honors those that gave the ultimate sacrifice, their lives. Bone Frog was founded by Tim